I was going to go into that aspect of your work in Africa much later, but I think gradually, because from the beginning, I think you shoot yourself on the leg by saying that we should make this a series. So I'll be coming back to make sure we take this bit by bit so that we have a wider communication that touches on different aspects of
because that's how I see it, that this is the force, and this is when we introduce by little bits and pieces of everything, and then what we would do, we would decide, okay, let's focus on this one. Let's focus on this one. Yes.
Now, since you mentioned that your program in Sierra Leone links with the next question I was going to ask about.
Ask it.
What are the entrepreneurial opportunities in the climate change crisis? That could benefit young people, because we're looking at how do we convert? What are the gains? What are the benefits from this? Is there a way that young people can enterprise, the mitigation and adaptation participation, and maybe also helping relevant government organizations to understand how they could enterprise the whole process and use the opportunity to create jobs that could reduce unemployment rates in different countries?
Well, for me, that's an excellent question, because that was the crux of the program that we did in Sierra Leone itself. And I also see that there are a number of countries in Africa that are trying to, look at what was done in Sierra Leone, Kenya, Liberia, that was nearby. I think
unemployment rates in different countries.
Well, for me, that's an excellent question, because that was the crux of the. Hello?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah, it was echoing a bit. Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. So if we just, two things that we need to look at. We need to look at, one, how do we create, because sustainable livelihoods.
Okay.
Because what I see climate change as an opportunity in Africa, an opportunity in the Caribbean, in Asia, to do things different. And the whole thing about the project, that one, and I see education as that vehicle. Okay. We know that young people are very creative, and that's from the definition, energetic, and so on. And they are more susceptible to change. They're not somebody they believe in trying things.
Yes.
And one of the things that we did within that program was to train people in entrepreneurship at a number of different levels, at the university level and through the technical vocation education programs run by the colleges. So that was and then we train a number of other persons at how to manage, the managerial aspect of entrepreneurship. And in that, an important part of that is the deal of development. We examined the curriculum. We met with the persons who are involved in this sector, and we work with them to develop the various curriculum. We train the instructors, because one of the problems that you have is that a number of persons been instructing, been teaching for 20-something, 30-something years, and there's a problem with the methodology. So we run training program in terms of innovative methodology. And I think one of the good things about what the government did in terms of Sierra Leone was to buy equipment. It wasn't enough, but new modern equipment, and these were given to these colleges and the universities. And so we look at areas like, because they were running carpentry, masonry, and that type of thing. programs, all outdated and that type of thing. So we developed what we call a sustainable building construction program. We look at agriculture, we look at what they're doing, and we work with them in terms of, through the agriculture, because agriculture is so wide, we look at sustainable fisheries through aquaculture, because of the vastness of the country itself. And for you from Nigeria, Sierra Leone is very small.
I know that.
But for me from the Caribbean, it's a vast, so we work with a university in terms of trying to develop aquaculture program from bachelor's up to certificate bachelor's master's level. And the other thing that we did was, one of the areas that would be impacted heavily would be tourism.
Tourism, yeah.
Yes, and the government, through its development plan, they have tourism as a very important part. So what we did, we work with the NCTVA, which is the award agencies, that to look at how do we include climate change adaptation strategies and programs within the curriculum itself. So we work with them and we develop the curriculum, we develop training manuals, and so the college itself was able to run these programs successfully for 1 year because of funding. And so over that 1 year, they developed a lot of practices and so on. And the key thing in terms of these posts, so they were able to introduce what we call, ecotourism as an important part of what they're doing. And besides introducing ecotourism, they also introduce, things like, different types of tourism where we get them to work with the various hoteliers and so on. I think one of the problem that we had was the COVID outbreak, but they also, they were able to understand, the impact of the COVID, and they see the COVID-19 as just a window for things that will come in the future if we don't do anything about climate change. So if we can't deal with COVID-19 at this stage, globally and collectively, how are we going to deal with the issue pertaining to climate change and developing the capacity and building the resilience of young people and their communities? Because young people is just one sector.
Yeah,
how are we going to do that, in the future?
You're right. Young people is just a sector, isn't it? When you look at the whole
climate
change scenario.
So the issue is that the entrepreneurship is an important part of that. And what we were able to see, there are a number of young people develop. We were originally supposed to train about 2,400 people across the board. And we were able to train 6,000 and certify 6,300, about 6,300 young people. And what was good, because of the training that was provided to the universities, and because of the technical advice and the assistance provided in terms of enhancing the governance and of these colleges, I am happy to say that I still keep in touch with them, that they continuing the program, even outside of the funding. And this is one of the weakness in terms of with aid funding.
Because I was going to ask a question on there, because in 2012, 2013, I attended the Young People's Workshop on peace building in Trabzon. Trabzon is a state in Turkey. One of the conversations that came up from the people who are managing IDPs and young people who are now IDPs in their countries is that they accuse the UN, for instance, that
Mm.
whereas there is plenty of funding going into humanitarian services, but it's not actually addressing crisis. It's not actually addressing the need, the issues that are affecting the public. And in one of the UN general meetings, the late president of Zimbabwe, that is Mugabe,
Yes.
accused the UN of spending so much in trying to negotiate and trying to solve problems of war, but every day of our lives, war issues are escalating. Is the UN actually, the funding actually doing the job, or we are only creating some job for some big people? The reason I gave you that background is on the issue of the continuity of these projects in the developing world generally. Somebody somewhere, in fact, the conference you participated, the COP21, there was an agreement of, I think, $100 billion that should be donated every year to help solve the problem of climate change and support developing countries and all of that. This funding thing, I have very critical outlook on the issue of developing country funding projects in different ways, and then the people are continuously moving into poverty. We get from worst scenarios to worst scenarios. So what is your perception, and what can we do to address it, so that if we want to solve a problem, we should be able to solve a problem to a full final stop?
Well, for me, and I think we allude to that earlier, is that one, you have a number of persons who are working within these institutions who they may be very qualified. And I'm not saying they may be all kind of degrees and that type of thing. But in terms of, they do not know or don't know anything much in terms of how do we engage. In fact, how do we, what is the process in place? Because I spoke earlier about the top-down approach and the bottom-up approach. These agencies work with governments. These agencies would stay, most of these guys would stay in the office, or they would go out in the field, and then they come back and they write a project, send it back to the government. I'm not saying that is the practice, but I knew of a number of times that these things happen, and the project itself have no relevance. All they want to do is to tap into the money. And then you have a problem within the government themselves, that sometimes that you have good people within the government who are willing and ready to implement the projects so that their people can be benefit, could redeem the benefit and so on, could gain new skills. But you have within these institutions persons who are very rigid in terms of how they manage these projects, how they manage these monies and that type of thing. So you'll find that the project would be completed, and remember earlier I talk about the number crunching, or we cover this with this is like a box ticking exercise. And the money is spent and so on, and the people, and because that funds and the program didn't engage the people, didn't involve the people in the process itself, that the people most of the times do not have much interest. And we know the reason why some of the times that they do not have much, because most of the times that they're fed up. A number of times I go out into the field and people say, look, you again, where you come for? We hear this happen and that type of thing, and nothing happened to us. But the only good thing that I can say, the experience in Sierra Leone, because we moved from a bottom-up approach. We were working with the government, and we have the full cooperation of the commissioner, the youth commissioner, and so on, who encourage us to go out, work with the people, because I want something happen. I want the youth to participate and to be empowered, and everywhere we go, the commissioner was there with us, giving us, and the good thing about the commissioner in Sierra Leone, that he came from the youth movement. He was a youth himself. So he came from the youth movement. So he's not just accountable to the government, but he's accountable to his own constituency, the NGO movement, and the youths themselves. And there isn't much country across in Africa and the Caribbean where you have this type of level of accountability and so on. So I would really like to encourage, and even some countries, they want to do certain things, but the problem is this, they're not equipped with the methodology in terms of getting these things done. The processes in terms of getting these things done. They call the right word empowerment and participation and involvement and engagement of young people, but they don't have the skills. So a number of development projects just go to naught.
Yeah. All right. So thank you again for addressing that particular point, because it's the issue about community projects generally. When I did part of my community project in northern part of Nigeria, I was really keen. Then I had no much knowledge about continuity and sustainability of projects, but I was really keen about what will happen when I leave all these projects and return back to southern part of Nigeria. What will happen to the community? What will come, a way to which someone can synergize this and continue my practice. It was quite interesting, and I think it's from then that I developed even more passion for community development and working with communities to co-create solutions that are embedded and solutions that communities themselves can be able to, they can manage in the absence of the creator. Even when you are not there, they understand the issues they can within themselves.
Because that's how you test. That's how you test where the development takes place.
Yes.
Is when you not around and things start continue. And this is how you test whether the project is sustainable enough. Yeah. I think one of the major problem that we have is, for example, that project in Sierra Leone. Is the upscaling. Here you have a model and a practice and a process. These processes are fully tested and that type of thing. But where's the resources coming from? And this is to continue these projects. Because one of the major problems that you have with the development banks, whether the World Bank, whether the regional banks, the UNDPs and all these agencies, is that they move on. They move from one project to the next. So they have what you call a project type of approach rather than a programmatic, sustainable development approach. And for me, for us to address the issue of climate change, for us to address the issue of underdevelopment that we really need and have to, force these international institutions and regional institutions to take on what we call a programmatic sustainable development approach rather than a project, because a project has a beginning and an end. Exactly. Yes. it ends, So and so that many times people say that, but when are we going to get the money to upscale? No, the UN and those agencies will tell you, no, there's another problem in a different country.
Yes.
There's another problem. So we have to try to address that rather than, so until, for me, what I see, what is important, this meeting that is taking place, the climate change.
The Glasgow.
Yes, in Glasgow, I think is for developing countries have to go to this meeting and hold these countries, the so-called developed world,
you see, the challenge is for developing, you have mentioned it, I think you stated that problem clearly. The people have the theory, right? but they don't have the pragmatic implementation hands-on
That's the thing.
to deal with these issues. And if you know only the theory and you fall short of the pragmatic sustainable development and rolling out programs that have foot on the ground, it will be difficult even when you get to the negotiation table to negotiate exactly what can be operational.
What are you going to negotiate when? Because the problem that you have from developing countries, these are the diplomats who come to these meetings, the technical people, the people who are hands-on, who walk on the ground within these countries. They don't come to these meetings. Government don't send them. And you find one of my major problems that I have when I attend, especially at 2015 climate change meeting, that most of the times are the people in Paris shopping. They go to the meeting at the morning and then they disappear. So there are a number of persons from Africa and the Caribbean, and Asia, they shopping, rather than being. So by the time they come back, is somebody who had to brief them in terms of, this thing take place. And I can say, because a number of them came to me, what happened during the day, Andrew? What happened this? How this thing go? And that type of thing. And I just shake my head and I say, my God, I can see the reason why. And then you find that they're being approached by the countries in the Arab countries who trying to, hold on to their oil. They've been approached by the Chinese and the Brazilians and the various countries who involve in these type of illicit, and illicit is too strong, unsustainable development practices and so on. And then you find that these guys would support, because these fellows would come to you and say, look, I have 5 million to give you, but I need your support at this. I have this, so it's difficult, it's because every diplomat would want to, report back into the capital to say, look, I broke a deal for 5 million, for 10 million, from these people. But they're not clear in terms of, it may be a diamond deal, it may be a fossil fuel deal or something, that it may be a deal that will clear an entire forest, rainforest, And so it's very, 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 very sad that, for me, what I think that developing countries need to do now is to start that discussion in country.
Exactly.
So that and come with a set of outcomes.
Yes.
These are the outcomes that I'm looking for, and so that you'll be able to negotiate. But if you come with your too long empty hand, and you're not even in the meeting because you're shopping somewhere, a number of them may be shopping in Glasgow, or some of them would fly down to London to shop. What are you going to? So it would be, I am very concerned about this meeting, because I would see it as same old, the saying, same old. My experience in 2009 in Bonn with another UN framework, and then my experience in 2015, in a sense, turned me off from these meetings. But I would encourage people, don't be like me, don't get turned off, to be there and try to have that discussion in country, and so that they can.
Thank you so much for providing that insight, and I think people will go. It's something I'm going to write a blog about this effective participation of African countries when they attend these high-powered meetings, beginning from who they select to participate, and getting people who are not just knowledgeable or who are in position, but people who are passionate about the impact of climate change. Okay, so second to probably the last question we'll ask, because I think it's about 1 hour now, is how can young people from developing world, for instance, participate in the climate conversation in terms of mitigation and adaptation, and mainstreaming this to a way they will operate it? How do you think they will break these barriers and engage and participate? Are they going to wait for someone to give them opportunity that will never come? Or there is a spontaneous, or there could be a spontaneous approach to which they can start the conversation and begin to participate and begin to educate themselves, for instance, to stop bush burning or to stop over exploitation of forests and cutting down of trees, looking at the social dynamics of poverty and political thuggery or political suppression and all of this. How would young people, participate?
I think one good thing, a week and a half ago, it was designated as International Environmental Day. And the theme was restoration of the ecosystem. What we have to do is and this is where young people, need to be involved. You don't need to, and remember I spoke about the bottom-up approach.
Yes.
Because when I started my work from a little organization that we started in 1978, you can't believe. Older than before you born. 1978, and the organization is still going. There's a daycare facility. It was the first environmental daycare facility that was in the world, and so on. And for me, that the focus should be on action. It should be two things that young people need to focus. What can I do within my community, to deal with the environment, to address the environmental issues? So things like tree planting, yes, that is something that need to be done. The absence of quite a lot of, and I see some popping up now in Africa, young people starting groups. My only concern is that a number of these groups are more or less internet groups. Okay. A website and a few persons say they're running a group. We need action. So we really need to encourage, and people like me and other persons, because I know a number of people will be checking into the podcast. What they need to do is to work and with young people, retired teachers, and even if it's still active working in the public service, yeah, but to take on some young people as mentors and work with them to develop programs. Because the good thing, whereas during my time I had to go to university to learn anything, now you don't even have to go to university because all the knowledge is at your fingertip. Yes. You Google and the information would come. So I would want to see the creation of, youth groups, youth organizations, making sure that we hold government accountable. And I believe in what you call a ripple effect, that if I start in my corner, you do something in your corner, this person do something in their community, another person do something in their community. And the good thing is this, that if we stay linked through WhatsApp and through, these other mediums that we can share and we could build and we can create. That is the reason why Greta Thunberg, was able to, with our group, to mobilize 6 million. And that was the same reason when, the 16 of us who were in 1991 in Switzerland, in Geneva at the United Nations, we were not able to do that because it was too expensive. So I think the key thing would be to use the media. The other thing that I would like to encourage young people is to develop, programs. You look at everything in the light of, that you can make a living from it.
Okay.
You know, so go on the net. There are quite a lot of free courses. I see Oxford and Harvard running free courses, you know, for 6 weeks, online courses. I would encourage these young people to do these courses. It doesn't cost you anything. All it costs is a telephone and the internet. And so that they can do these courses to educate themselves. You don't have to be in a university because time change and so on, because you can get more valuable information on the net. So to develop these things and link them, they've create your own businesses and that type of thing. You know, whether, you know, ecotourism businesses, where if you're a builder, you can look at the whole area of building sustainable houses, sustainable, you know, how do you deal with energy? You were talking about energy. You know, I saw something where GIZ in Sierra Leone, the project is run by a good friend of mine, and they train a group of women in build um, solar, you know, solar heaters and all that type of thing. And now these women are, in a sense, doing this as a living, you know. So they're contributing in terms of, to the economy and to the country itself, but they're also doing it in a sustainable way. So for me, there are a number of valuable things that young people can do, and the focus is on, you know, what we call taking natural approaches to deal with ecosystem. And if people start to create businesses for example, fisher folks, you know, if you try to preserve the um the forests and the various the mangrove swamps and that type of thing, it means that in the end you would get more fish.
Yeah.
You know, so this would benefit fisher folks communities and that type of thing. And it means that more fishes would be around. And rather than if you go to fish, you throw back the smaller ones rather than taking everything, so that if you do that, you know for sure that tomorrow, and if everybody educated to do that, you know that that it would be sustainable. You know, so there are a number of tangible, there's things like music, you know,
Yep.
that young people can look at in terms of, because music is one of the most important thing, you know, creating their own band. And you don't even have to, you know, just a computer. You could create your own song, but you can promote that, use it to promote the environment. So there are a number of tangible things that can be done, you know, whether you involve in tourism, whether you involve in housing construction, building construction, you know, whether you involve in, you know, energy, you know, protection and that type of thing. So my thing, as I said, the need to deal with it is a business, because if you can make a living from it, you know, it means that you would ensure that it is there for generations to come. So the whole thing is making sure that we do it in a sustainable way, that when we're gone, that the next generation, and I'm very concerned, you know, I just have another addition to the family,
Yeah,
my fourth grand and son. So I used to say that I am involved in this work because I want to ensure that I protect the environment, so that when the next generation, when my children come, but now I'm saying it for my grandchildren, you
yes.
know. So it's if you look at it, you'd have to look at it from a long term, and ensure that the livelihoods that are being provided is sustainable. And you do it, you involve, you do it around entrepreneurship, you know, making sure that, you know, people, that they able to make a living from it.
Out of it. And that's one way of making it attractive also to young people. If you see that they can actually make a living out of their participation and engagement, why not? Everybody will want to jump on it and do it. Okay, that's very, 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 very important. And thank you so much for providing insight on that. I think maybe next time, because there are so many
so many things to talk about, you know.
We'll examine what maybe the private sector and what private sector do.
Because not cutting you off, because one of the things that we did in Sierra Leone, and that project is so important, what we develop what you call a PPP framework, public-private sector partnership framework, which the government started using. And we went out to, you know, these private sector agencies, whether in tourism, you know, whether in building construction, you know, whether in agriculture, and try to build partnership. And in fact, some of these programs now are being supported by some of the colleges that are running the training. The programs are now being supported, you know, by these private sector. So that's a very important area to
you know, when I after my PhD, I started a project that's I'm still thinking if I'm going to drive it through. It was about greening our primary and secondary schools environment. The reason I brought that topic up and looking at it from a more pragmatic view is that when we were growing up, we used to have, you know, in most of our primary and secondary school, we used to have big trees that would provide sheds so that our pupils would play under the shed during school day. But now, the last time I went to and across so many schools, some of those trees have been fallen and they don't provide the natural shade anymore. Or very scanty. So as I came up with that thought that I think it's possible to negotiate with managers of primary and secondary school. I said, see, let's make our school naturally green by re-greening them and planting good trees that will make our schools really green, so that children or pupils can play under the natural ecosystem kind of shade instead of artificial canteens and those buildings that are provided for students, pupils to play. I prefer that natural environment, and of course, this will provide extra good fresh air even to our classrooms, and the mental health of the students could also
definitely
which I think is a project I will see how I can get more young.
No, I as a project I would like to because what I would love to work with you on, because what happened for about 10 years through my organization, we created what we call youth environment and service clubs in St. Vincent. In secondary, I think we had about 30 something secondary and about not 30 something, 20 secondary and about 30 something primary schools. And these kids were extremely active. One community where the youth community called Proven Vale, they put so much pressure on their parents and get the parents to keep the community very clean, you know, for years. You know, we did it. There was a small school. I'm not too sure whether the headmistress, because I saw when I send the thing out, is listening, you know. But there's a school in Argyle, I think, you know, where, and the community was next door, and they put so much pressure on their parents. And when we go, the parents know us like how, you know, like we grew up with them, you know. But it was because of that work. So it is something that, you know, we produce quite a lot of leaflets. You know, we assist the school in terms of how to set up these clubs. To the extent when I went to in 2019, I worked with the Rotary Club in Sierra Leone to set up a similar type of program where we run a workshop for 20 in Freetown, the city capital, 20 secondary school, and we brought them together and trained them. I even taught them how to sing Caribbean folk songs. But it's something, and with the problem in St. Vincent with the volcanic eruption, because this is something that I'm considering, trying to raise, because you don't really need a huge amount of money.
Yes.
Just enough to buy, and people would give you, there's some businesses, that when we approach them, that they were quite ready in terms of giving us, hundreds, thousands of trees and so on, and want to be part of it. So I think, to me, this is where we call the the PPP, the policy, and getting government to sign on, and communities to sign on, state to sign on, and so that we can, because that's the only how we're going to solve this problem with young people and climate change and that type of thing. We really need the participation of the private sector.
Every hand to be on deck to make sure it's effective. Okay, Dr. Simon, thank you so much for coming along today. We have a few guests. I'm not sure if, I don't want to say I'm not sure. If you any question from anybody with regards to the topic of today, you might either unmute and ask, or if you have any comment, contribution, that will be welcome. Or you could drop a chat if that will make sense. Whichever one is easier, I'll be able to read. Anyone?
Doesn't seem so.
Yeah, so it doesn't seem so. Absolutely, that silence means that there is nothing. So, okay, I want to bring the podcast and conversation to an end today. It was about how the impact of climate change on young people and how young people could participate effectively in the mitigation and adaptation programs and projects that we might have. So thank you so much for coming along. And of course, as usual, the reward for hard work is more work. So I'll expect, I will expect that when next I call you, let's have this conversation. I'll give you the wider publicity and maybe invite a few other guests to come along in a way that it will benefit.
Problem. No problem.
So, thank you so much and have a good day.
Thank you very much, Doc, for this being for me excellent program. And I know that hundreds of people would, when they, because it would be up, and people would tune in and send feedback to you in the future. So I'm always looking forward to working with you.
Thank
all
you.
The best. Okay.
Yes, it's live on YouTube now, my page. So it's there.
Okay. Okay.
This will be live on YouTube. So if I show you from here, you can see yourself on YouTube talking.
Okay. Yeah, because a number of persons said that they would, check it later.
So it's live program on YouTube.
Yeah.
And after now, I will send you the link.
Yeah. Okay. Take care.
Thank you so much. All right. Have a nice evening. Bye-bye.
All the best. Okay. Bye. Thanks.